Alright guys, welcome to today's video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about forms. So let me bring a form over here from a popular website you probably know about, um, called Facebook, right? So this is just an example of a simple web form. Forms are everywhere. Like 99% of the internet websites out there have forms because nowadays the internet is just all about getting people's information and harvesting it or making money off of it in some way, right? So forms are everywhere. You're going to be making forms a lot if you're going to be a web developer. So it's good to learn them now and get the fundamentals. So you can see if you hit like create new account in Facebook, for example, we have all these info come up. So forms are made up of form HTML tags and then other tags called inputs. So this is an input, password input, and then finally you get to like a submit button in the form, right? So those are forms on the front end, what they look like. On the back end, forms look like this in HTML. So we'll take an example here again from W3 Schools. And this is what forms look like on the code end that we'll be building. So forms start in form tags, so it's pretty understandable. Luckily, like most HTML, it's like English, right? So it's just a form opening tag and closing tag, and in between are the form elements or whatever whatever you're gonna put in there. These are the input. This is input code. So there's several different types of inputs for forms. There's text boxes, which is usually used for names. There's radio buttons, which are like little buttons that you can select, one answer or another. Checkboxes, you know what checkboxes are. And then there's like submit buttons, and there's more than this. This is just like the most common ones. And then, so just to show you like first name and last name, that's always going to be a input type of text because it's just text. And then like there's radio buttons, like I said. So these are the radio buttons. You can only select one option for radio buttons by default in HTML forms. And then of course there's like checkboxes here. And then there's the submit button that will submit the form. And if you're submitting the data to like a backend server like normal with forms, when you hit that submit button, it'll go to like whatever server you want, and it knows where to go via this thing called a form action. And that's typically used in conjunction with languages like PHP on the back end that tell it where to go. We're just learning HTML, so don't worry about all that stuff. But in the real world, that's how forms work. They get submitted to a back-end language on the server. But we're not going to worry about that today. We're just going to build the form out and see what it looks like in HTML. One other thing there is, though, I'll explain is form labels. So form labels are there for like screen readers, so that if somebody's like trying to read a form, they can put their mouse over a word and it'll read it out loud, basically. So we'll include some labels in our forms too. As you can see, there's like labels in these forms. So we'll do kind of the same thing there. That's just best practice for forms, okay? So I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to move this over here, and we're going to make a new file here in my HTML course code here. And I'm going to call it 11-forms.html. And I'm going to get my boilerplate code here, and I'm going to name my document HTML forms. So HTML forms. And again, guys, I encourage you to follow along if you're trying to learn HTML. What forms are, follow me, code with me, and then when I'm done, build some forms on your own with the information that you have, and take notes or do whatever you have to do. Okay. And we'll get started here. So let me go ahead and close out whatever I had open, and we'll go launch this page. And let's make a heading that says like sign up today. Make like a little fake form, I guess. There we go, sign up today. And then underneath there, we'll start our form by making our form tags. So again, you're gonna notice that by default, that action comes up, and it's looking for, it's asking you like, what's the action, what server are we going to go to when you hit the submit button on the form. And we're not gonna concern ourselves with that, so I'm just gonna delete that for now, because we're not submitting this to like a PHP backend MySQL server or anything like that. But let's just make like a general kind of like sign up form, and we'll do like one of each of the most common form inputs, I guess. So let's start with first I'm going to put everything in a div, because inputs and form stuff, like, they end up stacking side by side by default, and I don't want that. So I'm going to use this HTML tag called a div to make everything stack on top of each other. We'll go more into divs in another video. I'll have a video just about divs. They're very important in HTML and front-end development, but we're not going to get deep dive into them now. But just know that I'm putting it into a div so everything stacks on top of each other. And then I'm going to go ahead and make a label, and we'll say this is for first name, and then I'm going to write first name here in my label. So we're going to collect the user's first name. And we'll pretend that they're like signing up for a website like Facebook or something like that. And then I'll put an input here, and the type is going to be text. We're not going to have names or IDs, because again, this is stuff that pertains to like programming, if you're going to do some programming with this, which we're not. So I'm just going to delete that right now. Don't worry about what that means yet. It's not important. And then, so yeah, we have first name, and then I'm going to copy this div with all of that information that inputs that we just wrote out. And I'm going to say this one is for the last name, so L name. And I'll put last name. And then type is still text. So now we have a first name, last name. And then in between here, let's say that I want to space these out. I'll use a line break tag, BR, and I'll hit tab. It's just a self-closing HTML tag. And give that some space there, some breathing room. And then let's go ahead and do an email, I guess. That sounds good. So I'm going to say line break again, div, and then I'm going to say another label we're going to put email, and we'll put email and a colon, just to follow the same convention we've been doing here. And then I'm going to put input. And this time, instead of type text, we're going to put type email. And when you put type email, it's gonna that tells the browser and the back end to look out for this @ symbol. And if there's no @ symbol, it's not an email, throw an error message. So it's important to use the correct input type, even though it all looks like text inputs. It's not. There's an @ symbol for email as well. Okay. So say type email, and then it'll be expecting an email now. And then we'll do password. I'll show you that one. So let's copy this div, the line break, and all the information. And we have our label down here now. We'll say that's for password. And we'll say password. And then there's also an input type of password. And check out what that does. So text input types, they just take the text, but the password will actually hide it by default. That's pretty cool, right? So you can't see somebody's password. So there's that. And then let's do, what else should we do? How about some radio buttons? So let's copy, or I'll just do this. I'll do BR, div, and then we'll put an input type in this one of radio to make it a radio button that'll appear. And then we'll do a name, and we'll call it color. We'll ask people to select what their favorite color is, and then that way they can only select like one. So for the value, I'll put red. And then above here, I'm actually going to I'll put a paragraph that asks the question. So what is your favorite color? Question mark. Cool. And then down here, we're going to put label. And we'll say it's for fave color. And then for the value, we're going to put red. And then let's copy this down here. We'll add a couple more colors. And we'll say this one will be blue. And we'll write blue in our label. There we go. And then we'll do one more. We'll do green. And there we go. We have red, blue, green. And now, as you can see, we can only select one option for our favorite color. And then let's do, we'll do like one more. So I'm going to do another, do a line break, a paragraph. We'll say what. Well, let's see, what can we ask here? We'll do check boxes. We'll say what type of vehicle do you own? Some like random question. And we'll do a div, and then we'll do an input of checkbox. There we go. And then I'll get rid of the name and ID for now. And I'll put, we'll just put checkbox, then we'll put label. And we'll say vehicle. And we'll say bike is the first one, I guess. And then we'll make two more here. So I'm just going to copy that down. Checkbox vehicle, we'll say bike, car. And then let's just copy this down. And we'll say scooter. Scooters were cool back in the late 90s when I was a kid. And then that gives us some checkboxes here. And you can select more than one option in checkboxes by default in HTML. So, I mean, somebody could conceivably own a car, a bike, and a scooter, right? So that's not outlandish, really. But, yeah, so there's that. And then we'll go ahead and I'm going to make another div. And then I'm going to put an input type of submit. So it'll be our submit button. And then let's give it another line break. There we go. And then we have type submit, so that just tells it like, hey, this is a submit button. When it's clicked, it should go to that backend server that we're sending the form information to. And then another attribute for the submit is the value, and the value controls what the submit button actually says. So now I change it to go, it actually says go instead of submit. Or we can hit sign up. Okay. And then one other thing that I'm going to show you here is the required attribute, which you can put in, and that will make it so that it forces the user to put stuff in here. So we can put like, let's say that we want the email to be required. So let's say required, to start typing required, and I can actually select it here. And then maybe by like the email, we'll put like that asterisk, because you know that like sometimes when you see that on forums, it means like must have. And then maybe our first name is required. So I'll add that, and then I'll put an asterisk next to first name. And then we need a password. So we'll make the password required. And then we'll put an asterisk next to that. So really what we really want from our users when they're signing up for our website is their first name, an email, and then a password so that they can have an account. We don't really care about everything else, but if they fill it out, cool. So watch what happens when I try to submit now without putting that info in. See, it'll say, please fill out this field. And then I'll put like my name in here. So I'll put Nick. And now I'll try to submit again, and it'll just keep going down to each field and say, hey, please fill this out. But yeah, guys, so that's it for forms. That's how you make a form in HTML. Again, when you're not connecting it to a backend server, it's kind of pointless unless you're doing like a full stack website or application where you're going to communicate with the back end, or maybe you'll be on like a web team and then you'll be the front end guy to start, and then you'll have back end developers that handle the forms when they go to the back end. But yeah, so that's the basics of forms on HTML, and that's basically all you need to know at this point in your learning. So thanks for watching.